Ciao Juventini of the world, it's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video, and welcome to part 3 of Juve, NEWve, and NEWventus. Juventini out all over the world, and as many people as possible will enjoy these videos. I just went to make a cup of tea and my cat has up my keyboard, so I'm hoping they don't press the wrong buttons and mess up my whole computer system or laptop system. That's cats for you anyway. But yeah, so I'm back here with part 3, and I hope that you enjoy it, and Juventus fans all around the world will share this video with each other and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. As I mentioned in part 2, if I do, I'll probably even mention in part 1, but if I do get part 1 and stroke or 2, I can't quite remember, I might have done it both. If I do get, I think it was on one of them, but yeah, if I do get to monetize these videos, I will donate as much as I can to the club, in this case Juventus. So anyway, I'm going to try and stop waffling for the intro, and I often get curious or conscious because when I talk through the intro, I don't know if it's because I ask for people to like or sub or whatever, but people seem to leave, so I hope I don't offend or bore anyone, but maybe they just thought this football video is not for them. But anyway, I hope some people out there enjoy it, and I do hope that I get monetized, because then I can help things, causes like this. I can help myself and causes like this. Anyway, I nearly got it down to 1 minute, but then I started going off a little bit. But here goes. So these are ideas number 21 to 30. So number 21, I hope that Juventus can bring back the glory days, or even better. I hope they can start winning Champions Leagues, maybe even, or at least league titles, possibly Coppa Italia and things like that, and Coppa Italia titles and things like that. And on that note, I would love for the league, and something going wrong with the live chat. It keeps buffering, but as far as I'm aware, the video is uploading properly, but I hope the audio is all right, because I listened back to the last one. Something went wrong with a part of the audio. I think most of it recorded all right, but yeah, I hope that, as I say, they can go back to the best possible days, glory days, winning leagues, or at least coming close to winning leagues, getting into the top 4, and hopefully challenging for Champions League if not winning them, and doing as well as possible, winning as many trophies as possible, which I dream for Italian teams to do in Europe and internationally, mainly because my mad love for Italian football generally. I love to see Italian teams do well in Europe and internationally, and I'm not so bothered about who wins domestically, but I'd love for Serie A and Coppa Italia to have great sponsors, as many sponsors as possible. I'd love for Alphabet, the company that owns Google, the parent company of Google, to invest in Serie A and all the Italian leagues, actually, if they can, and like put, and I mean, I know they can, but if they think it's worth it, so they can put in as much money as possible, which I hope will benefit them. Another thing I was thinking about when I thought of NEWventus, it could also be like Juventus, as in Jews for Juventus or whatever. And I talked about how Juventus play in black and white. I talked about in point number 8, part 1, point number 8. Whichever order you want to put it in, about how Juventus play in black and white as well, and it reminds me of like Juventus. But there was a story that I saw somewhere where there was an inquiry about, I don't know if it was Inter Milan or AC Milan when they won the league. I think Inter Milan won the league, and a year later AC Milan won the league, or vice versa. And it could have been Inter Milan, I think, that anyway, it was one of the Milan teams anyway, and AC Milan and Juventus fans, I think, might have been Inter Milan and Juventus fans who were talking about, like, they're not really Italian, but they're Jews who won the league. So there was some anti-Semitism there, and I would love for the club and Italian football generally, as well as Celtic, to condemn all forms of prejudice and discrimination, whether that's misogyny or sexism, which people probably accuse me of sometimes, but or racism, xenophobia, or prejudice against ethnicity, or any other form of prejudice. Anti-Semitism, I think, is one of the words I'm looking for, or Islamophobia, or any prejudice against any religion, ethnicity, or anything like that. I would love for teams like Juventus, and maybe Italian teams generally, in Serie A itself, the league and the FIGC, and those involved in the game, the beautiful game in Italy, to challenge some of those prejudices. And as I said again in point number 8, it would be great if Muslims, Arabs, Jewish people, followers of Judaism, Christianity, and any other religion, or people from all different ethnicities and whatnot, will invest in the club. So as many different groups as possible. So maybe even Arabian investors, as I say, African investors, Asian investors, and so on and so forth. Number 22, I'd love to see what the club can do in the future, how it can adapt, how it can improve. I'm not sure if there's a problem with, as a side note, if there's a problem with YouTube itself or the internet, my internet connection, or whatever it is. But live chat, I did try and post a question, actually, I was going to say, which is to ask Juventus fans, who would you like to see at the club? I posted it, but it doesn't seem to be posting properly for some reason. I did type it up as well, so it's a bit annoying. But I asked what managers, players, coaches, and whatever would you like? I suppose you could say scouts, coaches, managers, and players. I don't know if it'll be in that order, but I suppose scouts are the ones who look out for those players, coaches, managers, and whatever, especially players. But I'd love to know who you would like to see play for Juventus. I'd love to know from Juventus fans. If I knew how to, because I think the questions, when you ask questions, it's either yes or no answer. But if I could put a poll up which gives options like about what players people would like to see play for Juventus, and like who would you like to see manage and coach and be involved in the club generally, who do you think would be a good fit for Juventus and help to take Juventus to the next level and to do as well as possible. And again, I hope Juventus can win trophies in the future, as many as possible, domestically, and for me, most importantly, in Europe and internationally as a fan of Italian football generally. So I hope to see what Juventus, as I talked before, about what they could change, what they can improve upon. I suppose improvements require change, and how they can modernise, how they can look at changing tactics and whatnot. Number 23, as I say, I'd love for the club to get as many investors as possible and get lots of money which they can invest in players, managers, coaches, and that sort of thing, and whatever will improve the team, improving diets and things like getting a director of football perhaps, maybe learning from things like Arsene Wenger did at Arsenal, improving the diets and things like that. Which is a bit hypocritical of me because I don't have the best diet myself. But with funding, hopefully they can bring in those things that whatever will benefit the club, and learn from other teams about how to use that money well. And hopefully they'll do a lot of good for the rest of the world as well. Number 24, I would love for, I'd say international investors. I go on alliterations a lot of time, but I'd love for Japan to have its own sovereign wealth fund that would invest in Juventus. A bit of a dilemma for me because I know they're rivals. But again, going on alliterations, I would love for the TICAD, or however you pronounce it, TICAD as an acronym, which is the Tokyo International Cooperation for African Development or something like that. I would love for them to work with Torino because the initials are T, and look at how Torino can do work in Africa. But Japan itself as a country, I'd love for them to have a sovereign wealth fund that invests in Juventus and possibly has lots of academies and sports clubs in Japan for the club. And also even Jordan, the country Jordan, and Jaguar, JML for Juventus, Jaguar to invest in Juventus, Jordan to invest in Juventus, Japan to invest in Juventus, and all potential investors that begin with J to invest in the club, going on alliterations. And I hope that will help the club. They could have academies, as I say, like for instance in Jordan, academies and sports clubs for Juventus and things like that. So I hope that will benefit the club a lot, of course, and benefit those countries that invest, or those companies that invest, and investors that invest in the club from all around the world. And also, I hope that the club will increase its fan base all around the world. Many people will find out about the club and things like that. And have as many fans around the world as possible, and also develop the national team with good young Italian players, as I mentioned before. Like so, having at least 3, preferably Italian, under 21 players in the team, in the squad, if not the team, and try and play as many of them as possible. Play the youngest possible team, and try to have a quota of, let's say, at least 3 Italian players on the pitch at any time, and things like that. So it would hopefully give a lot of especially younger players, game time, which again I hope will benefit the national team. And if I could fundraise also, I would love to fundraise for Italian football to have so many football academies, like Italy's own version of Fontaine, I think it's called in France, the Fontaine or whatever it's called, and learning from like Brazil, Argentina, and say France and Germany and all over the world, how they develop young players, and that kind of thing. So hopefully Italy will have its own version, like some versions of St. George's Park and things like that. And even if they get new stadiums, I hope they'll keep the old ones for youth development and have as many spaces and places for sports, places and spaces for practice and playing football as possible in Turin and across Italy especially, but also again around the world, like in Japan, Jordan, and other such places. And hopefully Juventini will practice for as many hours a day as possible. Having lots of funds obviously will mean that they can keep great players and also buy great players and things like that. Number 25, again, having investment from all around the world. I also hope people will find out facts and figures and information about Juventus, like for instance, how Juventus are involved in the Derby d'Italia, the Derby of Italy with Inter Milan, which is, I think, Italy's own equivalent of Liverpool United or Chelsea, or Celtic Rangers or whatnot. So it's probably the biggest derby in Italy, and also I think it's involved in the oldest derby, which is Juventus Torino. I believe that's the oldest derby, even though Genoa is the oldest team in Italy. So I hope people find out facts about that, like some of the history, like why they play in black and white. I believe that the kit was donated to them from Notts County player or manager or former manager or whatever, who went to Turin. But yeah, I'd love for people to find out facts and figures and info about the club. I'm 26. I'd love for Italian clubs to give back to countries they colonised. As someone who's an anti-imperialist and only supports Italy for football. And also, I was thinking about talking about an idea about. I was going to go off topic, but I think this video's gone a bit too long, so I'll probably talk about that on Sunday. So moving on, number 27, I hope the club acknowledges its heroes and things like that. Number 28. On that note, I hope the club uses or utilises, shall we say, uses, sounds like a bit of a negative term, but towards a mutual benefit, basically. So I think utilises sounds a lot better. But former players like Zizou, Zidane, I know that NEWventus already involved in the club as an ambassador. Del Piero could be involved, Trezeguet, and even people like Platini perhaps, and people like that involved in coaching and involved in being ambassadors for the club and that kind of thing, especially coaching the youth. I think passing on their skills to the youth, I think that would be a pretty cool thing. And once again, as I talked before about, I would love for Juventus to tackle match fixing, corruption, crime, criminality, again, prejudice and all sorts of negative things, and make the world a better place, turn negatives into positives, change the image of Italian football, including for itself all around the world and that kind of thing. So to build a more positive and ethical image. Number 29, I dream. I know I'm struggling to think of new ideas. I did want to talk about new ideas, but I dream that my fellow Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians, and I mentioned this point quite a few times, but in the past, but I would love for, as with other Italian teams, I would love for my fellow Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians, and maybe even mixed race groups and families, as they play in black and white, in Juventus's case, to go and help Juventus to practice and possibly play as Torino against Juventus and vice versa, to help Italian teams like Juventus and even Torino to practice. And also, as I often mention, I would love to see what neurodiverse people, like people with dyslexia, ADHD and related conditions, can do for Italian teams such as Juventus, with our creative ideas, like how we can look at ways they could bring in more funds to build those academies I talk about and buy even better players, or even invest in and or donate to the club and things like that. And number 30, once again, I'd love to hear from Juventus fans about what you would love to see for the club, what would you love to see the club achieve, who would you love to see be involved in the club, who's a scout you might have heard of that would benefit the club, coaches, managers, players, and all those involved in the club, a director of football. Basically, who would you like to see involved in Juventus? And I'm going to stop waffling, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And I'm out. Peace and love.